Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Full Scoop. My name is Oded Ran, and I'm co-founder and CEO at Clue, the hosts of this show. And today we have with us Mike Branch from Geotab, hailing from Toronto, Canada. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it going, Oded?
Yeah, really, really good. So, Mike, for any viewers who for any reason haven't heard yet about Geotab, please tell us more about the company and about your role.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in charge of data and analytics at Geotab. And for those of you who aren't aware, so Geotab, we're a data and telematics company. So we have an OBD device that plugs into the onboard diagnostic port of vehicles, ranging from passenger car all the way through to Class 8 heavy-duty vehicles in the construction, yellow iron equipment, across the board. And we're the world leader in commercial telematics right now. So we're connected to just over 2 million vehicles across the globe, with a very, very strong market penetration in North America. So US being very dominant, Canada, Mexico, and then a lot of growing presence globally. So on a daily basis, we're collecting about 40 billion data points per day across the globe. And that ranges in everything from, your GPS location through to windshield wiper activation, PTO usage on different vehicles, you name it. So very much the connected ecosystem for a commercial vehicle. So we've got about 50,000 customers across the globe leveraging the platform and the solution. And again, across many, many different verticals, ranging from government fleets all the way through to, rental cars, the construction industry, you name it. And what we're doing for our customers, for the most part, is providing solutions as it relates to, safety, productivity, dashboards that enable our customers. And we do this through an ecosystem approach. So we've got a number of different partners who are building solutions on top of the platform as well, too, and helping to really enable our customers.
Brilliant. And with all this vast amount of data, no wonder they need a VP data and analytics like you to be in charge. So we're going to speak much more about that. What can you do with that data? But before we start, tell us a bit more about your journey. It's a really interesting journey, right? You've been in the company for 4 years. How did you end up in Geotab? And how did life lead you there?
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting story. So I'm an engineer by trade, computer engineer. So as soon as I graduated from engineering school, started up my own software business with my business partner and lab mate there, Bob. We ran that company, Innovex, for about 13 years. And we did a number of different things. So we worked a lot in the custom software world, right? So we would develop purpose-built software solutions for organizations, ranging from folks in the oil and gas industry, so real-time data acquisition systems that sat on oil and gas rigs, through to healthcare platforms, so secure data collection platforms that allowed people to collect personally identifiable information in a secure way, and then report on that from an analytics perspective. And one of the things that I found that we did really, really well was develop a lot of dashboards and visualizations. And that was a common theme across every single piece of software that we developed, whether that be in the oil and gas industry or the healthcare industry. So what we decided to do is take that core competency and then develop a software as a service package. And for those of you familiar with Power BI or Tableau, it wasn't too dissimilar to that. So it had kind of this geographic tilt to it. We called it Maps BI. So as you would zoom into a specific area on the globe, you'd see all the metrics related to that area. It was very, very visual. And so we pushed that out back in 2013 is when we launched that product. Had never heard of Geotab or telematics before then, which is kind of funny. And at that point in time, my marketing director played squash with Neil Cause, who's the CEO of Geotab, and said, "You guys should really talk. I think there's some synergies there." So we did, and we became a marketplace partner with Geotab. And for those of you who aren't familiar with our marketplace, it's not dissimilar to an app store kind of feel. So we became a partner, worked a lot with the Geotab resellers and partner network to provide a value-added solution on top of the Geotab platform. And after 2 years of being a partner with Geotab, we decided to take that next step, and we were acquired, a small team of us, and brought into the Geotab ecosystem. And that was 4.5 years ago. So January 2016 is when I started my journey at Geotab. And at that point in time, We had a very, very small big data team. There were 5 of us in total, and we grew that team. So now we're just over 60, just in data and analytics at Geotab, and a number of different talented people that I'm working with. Some of the most talented people I've worked with in my life: data scientists, data engineers, software developers, visualization experts, and the folks who can kind of do that bridge between software development, AI, and the business realm. So we've certainly grown the capacity and acumen at Geotab, but that was really from our days of visualization and really understanding data. And I think that notion to be able to understand data and what you can do with it, how you can help your customers, that's what we're really all about in the department.
That's great. So, looking now 4 years after joining Geotab and 13 years plus after you started your first company, that was really a massive success. Well, what's the one thing you wish now you could have told yourself, wish you knew when you started your career?
You know what? And people who I may be offering some contrary advice to people who've done it the other way around, but I wish that we started with a kind of a product first scale mentality from the get-go. We started very service oriented, right? So we were with Innovex, we go contract to contract to contract, and to build a business and to scale it to the size, certainly that Geotab has been, it was a very platform-based approach, right? You start off with a product. Obviously, it's a little bit more challenging, more capital required to do that from the get-go, and the journey tends to be a little bit slower, but then you reach a critical point where you're able to scale really well. So that focus on a solution that will scale really well. One of the things I think that the Geotab does well, and I will say if I could have built my company to the size that Geotab is right now, it would have that same culture. So that's a really good feeling. I think having the culture is really important, but that ecosystem approach, right? So we go to market through a number of different partners and resellers, and it's really that ecosystem and that marketplace that we've created, which I think is so successful. So putting my hat on now and telling, Mike from 20 years ago, what he would have done is to really build out that partner network, focus on core competencies that can scale really, really well, and always do the right thing. And it sounds kind of corny, but that's truly what we believe in. Some things may take us longer to get to market, but we believe in doing the right thing to build for scale and build solutions that our customers and our partners can actually use well.
So, Mike, tell us a bit more really about Geotab, from what you're happy to share about the size of the company, revenues, and so on, to give us a bit of a sense of your success.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started at Geotab 4.5 years ago, we were a company that was tracking 400,000 vehicles across the globe for our commercial customers, just under 200 people in size at that point in time. Again, that was when my data team was about 5. Since then, we've grown to over 1,200 people in the company right now. Global expansion has increased as well. So while we're dominant in North America, we are expanding in other areas across the globe. And again, over 2 million connected vehicles right now. So from a growth perspective, it's been amazing to be part of a company that is growing at that pace. I remember 5 years ago, it was a challenge to find the right data science talent and engineering talent to come on the team. The university system hadn't caught up quite yet. It was, you had data scientists claiming to be data scientists who knew Excel, right? And now things have changed quite a bit, where we're seeing that acumen quite a bit stronger. But I think, and to the point where we have to turn away so many people at this point in time, and I think it's a combination of not only the university systems catching up, but also, the sheer interest in the types of data that we're working with. We always say that data scientists come to Geotab for the data, but they stay for the culture, right? Because it's a good way to attract people to the company for all the interesting use cases. Data scientists, that's what they love to work with. But if you don't have the culture, you can't retain them. And some of the interesting things that we're doing, that we're looking at, are certainly around data for our customers and helping them be more productive within their own organizations, be more safe whilst on the road. But we're also looking at angles like the smart city angle. So we've got a number of government customers, but as a result of having vehicles moving around the city, we can now look at things like at an aggregate level, right? That's very important. It's always, we take privacy compliance very, very seriously. At an aggregate level, I can look at corridor analysis and look at, if I'm a traffic engineer, I can now look at the average amount of times stopping at different intersections just based on vehicle movement patterns, right? We can look at everything from, hyperlocal temperature. These little vehicles are sensors on wheels that tell us something about the world around them. Windshield wiper activation gives us an idea if it's raining or snowing, again, at that hyper local level. So in addition to providing a huge amount of value add to our end customers, we can provide that much more value add through aggregating all of this big data and providing them with really, really valuable insights.
So if I'm right now a customer, obviously I have access to my own data. Can I access that data in Aggregate from all companies in my area? What can I learn from that?
Yeah, you can. So in a few different ways. And again, very clear, it's always Aggregate. We have data privacy and governance specialists on our team. We do motivated intruder attacks and risk re-identification determination. So we do make sure the data is Aggregate and not identifiable to any customer at all. But there is a lot of value in that Aggregate data for our customers. As an example, so we've got an ignition portal, ignition.geotab.com. And in that portal, we provide access to a number of different Aggregate data sets, everything ranging from dangerous driving areas in cities, right? So if I'm a fleet manager and I want to uncover, potentially where there's some dangerous driving areas, we normalize where people are slamming on their brakes consistently, right? And highlight these areas.
And what about, for example, fuel economy and utilization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So fuel economy is something that we look into quite, I think, differently than most organizations out there. So we take a true artificial intelligence and look into that, because when you're looking at fuel economy and benchmarking, it's not enough to do it by industry. You have to understand the movement pattern of the vehicle. So we've got a number of different models and data set generated from our big data ecosystem, where we can look at, is it better to drive a Ford F-150 for delivery in the Rocky Mountains than, say, a Chevy Silverado or what have you, right? Because we've got the models that look at the movement patterns and look at the geography and these important things and give you the real world fuel economy for a very specific purpose of vehicle.
Great. That's really interesting. So, Geotab competes with a bunch of other companies. And what do you attribute your success to? How do you differentiate when you come to pitch to a company who's looking for a solution? What do you think sells Geotab the best?
So I think it's a combination of a few things. I think it's our open API and ecosystem. Whatever we've built in our My Geotab product, which is the product that our customers get, and they can set up all of their trips, their vehicles, all this, whatever they get in that system, you can do all of that through our APIs, right? So if you want to rebuild our full platform, you could do it leveraging our APIs. And why that's important is because now our partner base can feel free to create. And we've created these building blocks for people to build on top of. So it's not uncommon for customers to exclusively pull our data via the APIs, and they create their own front end. So I think that kind of openness with the data is kind of item number one. Item number two, I think, is around our marketplace and our go-to-market strategy around our ecosystem that we've created. Right? We've got people building on top of our platform, everything from video telematics through to driver scorecarding and gamification. So you get this rich ecosystem of partners that are building on top of an application. So am I going to choose a full ecosystem approach when I'm choosing a vendor, or one where an ecosystem isn't there, right? And then I think the third thing is everything around data, right? And what we're doing. The future really for the company is looking at data and how we can use it at scale to help our customer base and help drive important decisions forward. So those three areas, I think, are what kind of differentiate us. And again, like I said, we build for scale, we build it securely, right? And we create these building blocks for people to really build on top of.
That's great. Thanks for that and for elaborating on that. So what's the biggest challenge you in the team is facing right now?
So I think some of the biggest challenges that are going on revolve around privacy and data residency, and it's something that I think the whole world is really grappling with right now because it's in constant flux. Right? We don't know when new legislation will be imposed. We don't know how it's going to vary from state to state, which it is, right? The CCPA and GDPR legislation. So we're following that very, very closely and implementing strategy as needed on these different requirements. So I think that's one of the challenges that we certainly face, and I think every organization in the world is probably looking at it from that same angle. What's going to happen? Nobody can really predict what the future will hold, and what new legislation will pop up in different areas of the world. So understanding that and understanding the challenges inherent within and how you implement strategy in product to be able to do the right thing, these are things that are certainly challenges now.
Have you already had customers who tell you, we'd love to use Geotab, but we want our data to just be our data. We don't want it to be shared with anyone else. Or in these cases, you just tell them, we might not be the right company for you.
Our positioning is that the ecosystem approach is where you're going to get the biggest value out of the data, right? So, and where I think we position that very strongly is that the data the individual data is that customer's data. It is never, ever shared with anyone. But wouldn't you benefit tremendously if you had access to data that can help drive your business forward from a benchmarking perspective, right? Recommender systems that can tell you how you should be, navigating your business to get it to that next level. And if you want all of that, that comes with that ecosystem approach. So oftentimes while we do certainly get that perspective coming from customers, usually when we do explain the positive net benefits that come out of it and the fact that their data is held very, very private and is theirs, that usually is enough of a persuasion to allow them to see the positive results that can come from such a system.
Right, which is the direction that I guess the world is going any case in terms of openness and leveraging the big data.
Yeah, but it is so crucial and important, and the two need to be in balance, right? You need to balance data privacy with innovation and doing the right thing by your customers, and these are things that we wholeheartedly believe in.
Good. So you've been involved intimately with both engineering and product for years now. And I'm guessing that comes with success as well as mistakes and failures. So do you mind sharing with us one failure that you had in a product launch, and what did you guys learn from it?
I think the word failure sometimes is hard to. So I wouldn't classify it necessarily as a failure, but not as successful as I would have hoped it would be. Let's put it that way. So we initially launched our portal data.geotab.com a couple of years back, I would say. And again, this was an aggregate portal where all of this data was housed, right? And you could go on there, you could look at, again, dangerous driving areas in cities, you could look at intersection insight metrics, you could look at location analytics on fuel stations and service centers, and some really, really good data. Problem is, it was just data. So the acumen it would take somebody to, first of all, realize that it existed, to figure out what to do with it and how to leverage and use it, it wasn't there. And you'd have to go through an inordinate number of steps to extract the value, even though we've done the work, the heavy lifting to get the data in a place where it can be leveraged and used. Oftentimes leading the road down to that use case was very challenging. So having stepped back and looked at, okay, well, what could we do better here? We felt it was better to give an avenue for people to explore the data. Right. So that's when earlier this year we launched Ignition, and now that wraps those data sets in a way that allows people to visually see what's the meaning behind the data. So if I'm looking at cellular coverage dark spots in the Appalachian mountain ranges, I just click on that and it visualizes it for me. And then that allows business people and technical people alike to have that conversation around what the data can be used for. And so there still will be stepping stones towards data utilization and this kind of thing, but at least it allows those conversations to be easier. And I think some of the challenges that we face, that anybody, I think, in the data science world faces, is trying to understand when an AI problem is done. When is it good? When is it good enough to push out there? So oftentimes I have those discussions and where you spiral into months and months and months of unending research, right? And the research is good and it's really powerful, but you need to get something out to production as well. So I think as we're all learning how to work in some research intensive data science and AI based teams, we've now developed methodologies around how to move things more quickly to production, recognizing when an AI problem is going to take you, 2 years versus 2 weeks, right? Very important things too. So those are some of the challenges and kind of failures that I've had along the way.
And what excites you? What are the opportunities do you see that in 2020 there is still not a good solution, and you think, yep, that's what we should be working on?
Well, I think everything around the means for smart city applications, there's so much potential there. Everything from a vehicle to infrastructure communication, right, is not where it needs to be. There's been many kind of segmented pilots in different areas, but I think more standardization around that. But that also is a function of the technology, but then also the standards and the adoption by the city as well too. I sit on a board, the Open City Network, with a few other Canadian companies, and it's geared at helping cities understand what some of the impediments are going to be in this data-driven city, this digital twin, if you will, of the city, and how we can combat these from a policy perspective, right? I mean, there's data privacy challenges, there's technology challenges, so it's across the globe, and I think so. Whilst it is a super interesting technical challenge, and I think that we'll get there, it's not just technology that's going to enable that. So. So those are some of the things that excite me, though. Everything around that smart city realm with vehicle to infrastructure communication and what these data points can tell us organically without somebody having to go in the city and do a speed test and all these we should be able to operate our cities much more efficiently than we have been.
And lots of the people listening or watching this work in the construction industry, which obviously Geotab has a lot of customers in that space. What specifically do you think companies in construction space can get today if they start to use your products?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So at Geotab, we have a lot of customers certainly in the construction space. I admittedly am not a construction expert. My focus is certainly on data and AI, but I think a couple of the relevant areas that do touch on the construction industry, on the predictive maintenance standpoint. So making sure that my vehicles don't have as much downtime as they should, right? So making sure that they're capable of being used at any point in time when you need that vehicle. So we've done a lot of work on predictive maintenance, and this is where I think telematics and measurement of this data is crucial to allow you to understand, is this vehicle going to experience downtime? What is the likelihood of that happening? How important is that to my business? And to give you a parallel use case, we did a lot of work on electrical systems and creating predictive models around when we think a battery is going to fail in a vehicle. And if a battery is very cheap to replace, but it's the downtime whilst on the side of the road that is the huge cost driver. And we did a number of different case studies that we've published. Did a lot of work with Pepsi on this as well too, one of our large customers, and has some phenomenal results. Now you can imagine being able to predict which vehicles will likely have that downtime and what that will do for your business, and making sure that you have them up and running as much as possible. So within the construction industry, you could take a similar approach, right, from a predictive maintenance perspective. And the nice thing with the Geotab ecosystem as well is that it's not only the data that's driven from necessarily the device itself, but you can hook up other sensors to that device as well. So if I'm running a machine learning algorithm to predict whether something is going to fail or not, I need as much data as possible about that vehicle. And that might come from the device, it might come from connected peripherals as well too. And I may also use big data for that, right? I may want to know hyper locally at that point in time, what was the temperature? Because does temperature impact a system failing? And in some cases it does. With battery, it certainly does. I think certainly on the predictive maintenance side is one area. huge impact to construction from a productivity perspective. And then also utilization, making sure all my assets are utilized as much as possible. And if I've got a number of different locations throughout the United States, Canada, or the globe, how are those different areas being utilized? Are some underutilized? Are some overutilized? Can I reposition my assets? So that capacity to extract that value from there is great. And then we touched on, fuel certainly at the beginning, right? Fuel is a huge, huge expense. Am I idling too much in certain areas? Is that wasting fuel? Is there a better fit for me from a vehicle perspective? So understanding these, benchmarking them. We always say our mentality is you can't manage what you don't measure.
Right.
So you better start measuring something so you can manage and improve the productivity of your business.
One of the things we're seeing is that a lot of OEMs, manufacturers of equipment, are starting to now have their own telematics systems. Do you envisage that affecting where the business is going with Geotab in the next few years, and how are you adapting to that?
Yeah, no, great question. So we actually work very closely with a number of the OEMs. So in addition to getting data from our Go device, we're also pulling in data from a number of the OEMs. So we've got an integration with Ford, an integration with GM, and more coming online. So where the huge value is in these mixed fleets and in normalizing all of this data and allowing a system to be that connected vehicle, this platform. That's where Geotab really plays, right? Oftentimes people don't understand is the amount of downstream processing and analytics and BI capabilities and rules that you need to set up downstream from just the data is this big. Getting the data in there is that big, right? So that's where we pride ourselves, is on the downstream applications of this, the ecosystem that we've created, the APIs that we've created that allow for the extraction of this data so that it can be used frontline for the business. And that's our huge value add. Where the data comes from is almost irrelevant, right? As long as the quality is good, and we spent many, many years ensuring that the quality of the data coming into our ecosystem is very strong. As long as that is maintained, it's about the downstream applications, what you actually do with the data at the end of the day.
That's fantastic. So, and I'd love to get your opinion. One of the things we're doing at Clue is connecting the data from construction equipment, but as well as adding the data from the operators, the people themselves. Do you see that as a trend increasing, that people want to track not only their equipment, but also their teams and people and job sites, and add that piece of information?
Yeah, all of the time. And so it's, multiple assets being tracked. And the nice thing that a lot of our partners do, they'll take the data from the Geotab APIs and combine that whilst working with an end customer with their other line of business systems, whether that be a people management system or another asset management system, and combining that data to provide the requisite KPIs to a business to help it run. So yeah, we're seeing more and more of that happening. I would like to see more and more of it happening, because that's where you get the real power in the data, is when you start combining with all of these other data sets. And I always talk about making sure that we can elevate the importance of this data, not only to fleet and fleet managers, but to the boardroom as well, right? This is powerful data that is telling you something about your business, right? And when you can combine that with other data sets, it's so strong. But oftentimes it does get locked in fleet, right? And I think we need to do a better job in general, taking it out of fleet and making sure that other lines of business can see the value.
Great. And I wish I was in your war room looking at the impact of COVID-19 on all the type of movements and data in the last few months. So what can you share with us? Obviously on an aggregate level, are we out of it? Are you seeing the same changes that we're seeing elsewhere? What does the data tell you about the impact of COVID-19 in US and in Canada?
It's been really interesting. We when this whole thing struck, right, middle of March in Canada, here in the US, certainly everybody's worked from home, and it's easy for a data professional to work from home, right? So we stood up these daily meetings every 15 minutes at the beginning of every day, combined data, marketing, and privacy. And we said, what can we do here that can help the industry, right? And help our customers figure out where we're tracking. And at the end of the day, it came down to, we kind of took some inspiration from the Johns Hopkins dashboard, right? That shows us country by country what this curve is looking like. How am I flattening, right? So we wanted to look at how is the commercial transportation sector recovering. So we looked at pre-COVID baseline activity by geography, by industry sector. And then we looked at what's happening, and we have this longitudinal trend. So if you go to our website, you'll see the full dashboard there that gets updated every day. Construction industry actually started picking up earlier than most. So we all hit that kind of lull around Easter weekend in April there. That's when everything kind of dipped. But construction was probably one of the first industries to start slowly picking up again. So we're seeing slow pickup across the board. And in many cases, we've actually started to hit in North America at 100% of where we used to be. That didn't start hitting till probably end of May, beginning of June. We start to see Canada is cycling a little bit higher to recovery at this point in time than the US. We're still seeing a weird weekend to weekday anomaly. So weekdays are pretty much norm. Weekends are still considerably down. So you'll see these little dips, right? So we normalize utilization based on day of week. But yeah, construction sector certainly started to pick up sooner. Again, slow recovery. Freight and logistics, manufacturing, those were pretty consistently good across the whole time. And then the one that took the biggest hit was non-freight transport, right? So these would be things like school busing, rental car, the typical industries that you would experience and we haven't seen any recovery there quite yet.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And for anyone who wants to see this information, like you said, it's all available online on geotab.com, correct?
Yeah, geotab.com. And then you can just look up on our blogs and our search there, just look up COVID-19 recovery.
Great. So we'll finish with a couple of last questions. And one question I ask everyone who comes on the show, if you had a fun day operating any piece of construction equipment, which one would you choose?
I think I was telling you, Oded, on this one. It was interesting because I didn't even know this one really existed until I was reading my 4-year-old, his book on construction vehicles. Oh my God, this is amazing. Then I looked it up, and what it can do is phenomenal. So the bridge builder, it would be mine. I think it's phenomenal what it can do in terms of building out a whole span that quickly. And I've seen some of the videos online, just phenomenal. That would be my first choice.
That's awesome. So, Mike, I'm really, really grateful you joined us on the show. If any one of the people listening or watching want to follow up with you directly, what's the best way to speak with you online?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn, Mike Branch on LinkedIn, Geotab, pretty easy to find, and happy to engage in any conversation. Please do make mention of this specific podcast so that I know where you came from.
Fantastic. So, Mike, thank you again so much. And as always, you can find more information about this conversation and everything we discussed on the resources section in the podcast. Mike, thank you so much for being with us. And I look forward to speaking with you again before long and hear how are you doing and what are the next steps and next adventures for Geotab. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here, Oded. Thanks.